there defensively. That's 5 runs he's involved in. Matt Chapman.
Olsen skies one high and deep to right field toward the corner. Adele onto the track near the wall, leaps up and got it. Makes the catch for out number 3. Olsen. On he goes. Which is hit out towards center field. That's smoke. That is going to be into the bushes. A 2-run home run for McCutchen. And the Phillies take a 2-0 lead.
Here's another 3-2 going again as Soto hits one high in the air, right center field. Brinson near the wall, leaps, and he makes the catch! Lewis Brinson makes an unbelievable catch over the wall in center field.
All right, everybody, welcome in to this very latest edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show. Of course, I am your host, Kevin. And we are pleased to welcome back in to our show a man that we thought we were going to have to file a missing persons report, but he is here. And of course, we're talking about Dan, who is the Belly Up Baseball department head. And so, Dan, we are glad to see your smiling face back on here tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back. You put me and Nick on waivers for a couple weeks, and then I went missing for a couple weeks. I wasn't performing, but now it's good to be back. It's Phillies got a sweep today, even in Pittsburgh. Winning 4 games is always a good thing, but it is fantastic to be back talking to you guys.
All right. So also joining us after a 1-week absence, we got Vince, who, as everybody should well be aware by now, is the host of the Sports Stove podcast, which can be seen throughout North America and South America and just pretty much everywhere, right, Vince?
Yeah, all the world. You can get us anywhere.
Yeah, all throughout the world and possibly even out there on the ocean liners selling the seas right now.
Sure.
So, Vince, how are you doing this evening?
Man, I'm doing great. Even though the Brewers lost today, they've had a pretty good run since the All-Star break. And so that's been encouraging. Freddie Peralta's coming back, so that's great. I picked up a pitcher today that wins me in my league with a great outing. So I got to tell you, Kevin, it's going pretty good for me right now.
All right. So, and I know the pitcher you're talking about, Reed Detmers, who I also picked up in this other league that I'm in, and I happened to win that by a single point. If I hadn't picked up Detmers, I would have not won, and you could have cast me adrift, and maybe I would have been lost for a couple weeks too. I don't know, but I survived. I survived Pablo Lopez today, and I'm sure I'm going to be talking about him a little bit later on. But so all 3 of us won our fantasy leagues today, so we are in great shape. And before we get into anything specific, of course, we got to talk about the sponsor, which is intheclutch.com. And if there's anybody out there, and I can't imagine that there is, that hasn't gone to intheclutch.com yet at this point, you need to get over there. They have all kinds of officially licensed merchandise. They've got tons of baseball. They got football, basketball. They've got everything else you could possibly want. You could get lost, and maybe we'd have to find put a missing person report in for that person, because they could go on there and just be searching for quite some time. But so wait till the end of the show. Get over there to intheclutch.com, and don't forget to put up Belly Up Fantasy in the code to get your 10% off. All right, so we know. Yes, go ahead, Vince.
Before we move on, we got to pat ourselves on the back for a second with this Reed Detmers thing. I knew that he won me my league, but what I didn't realize is that he did it by becoming the first pitcher in 7 years with a no-hitter and an immaculate inning in the same season. Had a no-hitter on May 10th and pitched the second inning, an immaculate inning in the game today. And me and you saw it coming, so we jumped right on top of it, and we should get a round of applause for that, I think.
So, all right. So let's go ahead, and there's our applause. All right, and we definitely need. Here it comes, man. Okay. So cheering throughout the land for Vince and Kevin tonight.
There you go.
All right. So we know that the biggest story maybe in all of sports at this part in time is that the trade deadline is now less than 48 hours away. And so it's been pretty slow up until now, but we do have some moves that we could talk about. And the first one that dropped really was Andrew Benintendi going to the Yankees. And when I first heard this, I was kind of like, okay. But then when I started looking into it, Benintendi is exactly what the Yankees need. And because he is the guy that he doesn't strike out. And I think I wrote it down here. And he has 52 strikeouts and 390 plate appearances. So he's the anti-Gallo. All right. So, and with Stanton still on the IL, which is not good news for me because I've got him. And but he fills a big hole in in the outfield, and he's a guy that can, he's let's see, he's 6th in hits, 11th in on base percentage. No, he's 8th in hits, 6th in batting. So he is a guy. If you happen to have him, you can expect a huge boost with him coming down the stretch. And so I'd be quite pleased if I was an owner of Andrew Benintendi right now. And so, Vince, do you echo that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Yankees needed anybody not named Joey Gallo, right? At the end of the day. And he's got Benintendi has a history of being a good baseball player. He had a couple years where he underperformed, and this year he's, I'd say, average to some degree, but I do think he boosts the Yankees, gives them better depth, and gives them a better opportunity to provide more runs, which they're already killing it in a lot of areas. But yeah, he's a safer bet than Joey Gallo. Fantasy wise, I think he's a good person to have on your roster. I like these trade moves. You take a guy from a team who's not going to make the playoffs, put him onto a guy to a team that's going to make the playoffs. I'm all in on those guys. I want to take a chance on those guys. And I think Benintendi, what he gives you is usually a pretty rounded out stat line. So I like it. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So, Dan, you agree?
Absolutely. Andrew Benintendi is a guy that's getting on base around 390 this year. And
yep. 384 is pretty close. Yeah.
And to get a guy like that's going to hit in front of Aaron Judge, that's always a good thing, to get more guys on base for Judge. And it's going to be good for Andrew Benintendi because he's going to score a lot more runs. He's going to continue to give you the on base and the low strikeout rate, the high batting average, and he might get a few cheap home runs being a lefty in Yankee Stadium, just hooking them down the foul pole down in right field. So this is a great move for Benintendi fantasy wise, and it's a really good move for the Yankees baseball wise, because Aaron Judge might just get to 150 RBIs this year instead of the 135 he was on pace for before they got him.
Right. So this works out extremely well for everybody involved in this. And another thing that works out extremely well is the trade that, of course, I guess we can call Seattle, Cincinnati Northwest now. Okay. Because they got Luis Castillo. There are a lot of teams that wanted him, including the Texas Rangers here. And if you're a Luis Castillo owner, you have to be pleased beyond expression that the Rangers didn't get him, because the Rangers aren't going anywhere, and they're not a good baseball team. So right now, but he goes to the Mariners, and it just so happens that the Mariners, that they might need something because they've got players that just got hurt yesterday. And so, and their rotation was 4th in the American League in team starter ERA. So this gives a huge boost to the Mariners, in my opinion. And if all these other guys that we're going to talk about in a few minutes get healthy, and we have, I think this is a great trade for the Mariners. I don't have Luis Castillo, but if I did, and I chronicled him in my article about difference makers coming down the stretch in a fantasy setting, And the fact he went to the Mariners boosts his value through the roof, as far as I'm concerned. And so, Dan, you agree with that?
Absolutely. Luis Castillo has been a fantastic pitcher for most of his career. Last year, he had some struggles in the first half, but then really turned it around in the second half. And baseball-wise, this is a great move for, I think, both teams. The Mariners get a third starter to pair with Robbie Ray and Logan Gilbert. And those are three pitchers I would not want to see in a 5-game series.
Right, because they're not going to beat the Astros, so they're going to have to be in the wild card game. And three pitchers of that caliber sets up the Mariners pretty well.
It does. And for the Reds, they got Noelvi Marte, which if I had been told that Luis Castillo was going to go to the Mariners, I would not have included Noelvi Marte in the trade. He's a fantastic prospect, and I think the Rays did a great job of getting value for a really good pitcher and a pitcher that has a year and a half of control now for the Mariners.
Which is why the Rangers were trying to get him, because he's controlled through next year.
Absolutely. And the Mariners did a great job getting him and now get him for this postseason run and potentially one next year.
All right. So, Vince, you chime in with that as well?
Yeah, I think it's a rare win-win trade for both teams. Now, the question mark is, again, prospects, right? Anytime you're dealing with prospects, you just don't know what you're going to get at the end of the day. I mean, the Reds have traded for prospects before, and it really hasn't turned out well for them. But Castillo was successful even being on the Reds, which now you put him into a program that's on the rise. I mean, Seattle has had a really good run here over the last month or so and put themselves in position. You know, you would have asked maybe a month ago, you would have said, well, Seattle's a sell team at the deadline. And now they were clearly a buy team. They were willing to give up three good prospects, supposedly. But they add an important piece to their team while not losing anybody who's contributing this year either, other than the injury that just happened. This Mariners team got stronger. And ideally, the Reds got better for the future as well, which is what they need to be doing right now. Also, so I think it's a win-win. I like Castillo. I like him on the Mariners, especially. I thought the Mariners could make a splash. They Dan mentioned this. They paid a lot to get Castillo, honestly, and I was a little surprised by the price. But at the end of the day, for this year and next year, I think it's good for the Mariners. And if those three guys turn out to be really good, maybe they'll kick themselves. But overall, I think it's a good trade for both teams.
Well, they may not kick themselves so much if they, in fact, make the playoffs because, as we've said many, many, many times, they lead the whole entire universe in years since they've made the postseason. No other team in any sport has gone this long without making the playoffs. And so Castillo, he goes from a bandbox of a home stadium. He goes to the Mariners, and that's, I don't know if it's so much a hit or a pitch park. Maybe it's middle of the road, but anywhere is better than pitching in Cincinnati. And so as a fantasy owner, you've got to like that. You've got to like the fact that he's gone to a better team because he's only 4-4 despite a 2.86 ERA. And he has 14 starts of 7 innings or more. All right. And so it's unbelievable what this guy has done in Cincinnati. And so I am fully on board with him going to Seattle. And so after that, things slow down. They'll probably wait until 5:45 Tuesday afternoon to make some of these moves.
No, it'll happen at 9:01 p.m. tonight as soon as we go off the air.
That's right. As soon as we go off the air, our phones will light up saying, hey, Juan Soto has gone to so-and-so.
Yeah.
But the only other trade that's really worth talking about is David Peralta goes to Tampa Bay. Anybody excited about that? I know I'm not. Anybody? Anyone?
I think it's a decent move for Tampa.
It helps him.
Yeah, but it is what it is. Tampa, goodness, right now, Tampa's struggling they're below the Mariners right now. So they need
That's right. They're out of the playoffs right now, as of course is Boston.
Yeah.
And so
Boston's below Baltimore. So yeah, let's talk about
that's
that.
right. That's right. They sure are. And so there's a lot of things that we could talk about as far as players in the mix. Of course, the number one player is Juan Soto. And just before I came over here, they were talking about him. There are 3 teams, which is San Diego, St. Louis, and the Dodgers lead the way to try and get him. And so we'll see what's happening with that. I would not be surprised if nothing happens because Washington doesn't get what they want. And they don't have to make a move because he's not going to be a free agent for some time yet. And so do you, Vince, still think that he's going to get traded? And if so, where do you think he might wind up?
Yeah, I think he does. There's too much smoke around it right now. Everyone is really leaning towards him getting moved. Sounds like teams are offering really high prospects and draft picks and things like that for him, which makes sense. He's 23 years old. I mean, you're going to go out and get a guy that's going to help you. I mean, if he ends up in San Diego and they don't have to give up any of their guys that are playing right now, that'd be incredible for San Diego. They'd be totally stacked on offense. I've stuck with this, even though this isn't in the reportings. I think Chicago, the Cubs, are a team to watch out here as well. And St. Louis makes a whole lot of sense as well. The Dodgers, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, have a deep farm system, so it makes sense. They can also throw a name like Bellinger into the trade if they want to and provide a little bit of veteran. I mean, to say veteran, he's young too, but veteran presence there in return. So I think San Diego and Los Angeles are both interesting. St. Louis, though, and again, I think the Cubs, even though they're not a this year team, make a lot of sense as well. So I think he gets moved. I think it's probably going to be Tuesday as we get closer to the deadline because they're going to want to milk it for everything they can. I think they're getting really good offers. They're just going to make sure they have the best offer before they pull the trigger.
All right. So, Dan, what is your analysis on this? Where do you think he's going to wind up if, in fact, he is traded?
Well, I think he will get moved, and I agree with Vince. I think St. Louis can probably offer the best package. The question is, will they? I kind of expect, when I saw that it was down to 3 teams, I expected the Cardinals to not be in it because they've always been pretty stingy with making a huge move like this, at least by trade. But if I'm the Nationals, I want the Cardinals to make me the best offer because when I look at the prospects and young players that could be involved, I like the Cardinals the best. But it also hurts me because the Cardinals and the Phillies are going to fight for a playoff spot this year. And adding Juan Soto in between Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado does not sound like a fun time for any pitcher, let alone Phillies pitchers when they have to go to St. Louis at some point.
Well, at least you wouldn't have to face him as much if he was still on Washington, though, right?
Well, at least we beat Washington because the rest of the team stinks.
That's a good point, right?
Josh Bell's really the only other guy that has any value.
We're going to talk about him in a minute too. So,
hey, right, Kevin. Speaking of guys that we're trying to get rid of, let's welcome into the program right now. Our old friend Nick joins us a little late today.
Wait a minute, he was there. What happened?
Oh, there. Are you pushing the button?
I'm pressing the button.
Go.
All right. So, Nick, you're in here right at the right time. And so we're talking about Juan Soto right now.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Okay. So where
Thanks for coming on, Nick. See you later.
Yeah. So, that's probably why we hit that button and said goodbye to you just like that. But,
probably.
But anyway, so where do you think he gets traded? And do you, in fact, think he's going to get traded?
I most definitely think he's going to get traded because number one, he doesn't want to be there. Number two, the Nationals, they're not going to keep him a disgruntled player. I don't know anybody, any organization, whether it be pro sports or corporate, that wants to have a disgruntled employee. And three, they're going to try and get the best package off for him because they want to get him off their books. And I was listening to you guys before I came on and about the best packages. Right now, Dan was saying St. Louis. I don't want him to go to St. Louis for the reasons that he said. But right now, according to prospects1500.com, St. Louis has got the 21st best farm system. So I don't know what kind of a package that they're going to be putting together, because they're going to be looking, because if St. Louis is looking to be in it, they're not going to give anybody away that they're going to use to contend with right now. So as far as farm systems goes, you'd probably have to go with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers have the 12th. New York's the Yankees, they have the 10th. I don't see them doing anything because they just spent the bank on Benintendi. It is down to 2 teams. I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets sweep in there and put a package together, because they're going to try and hold down the East, because looking over their shoulder, here comes Atlanta, as always. So I would probably say the Mets will get him.
Okay, so there's a lot of intrigue still to come with.
And I don't know if you said
Soto.
the Mets were in there before, and just look at this. Ironically, you know who's got the 4th best farm system? Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got the 4th best farm system. The Major League Baseball's franchise.
Okay, so I think I'm pretty safe in saying he is not going to Pittsburgh. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty safe in saying that. And so another player over there.
Vogelbach, they don't have anybody to offer. So no.
Well, they could offer him Quintana. So
yeah.
All right. So, but another player that they do have that I certainly think is going to get shipped out of town is Josh Bell, the first baseman, and that would excite me greatly because he's on my fantasy team. I drafted him, and he has exceeded every expectation. I couldn't have expected him. Let's see. I got it here. He's hit 305 with 14 homers and 57 RBIs. He had a 3-run homer yesterday. So the guy has hit since the opening bell. He has continued to hit, even though the Washington Nationals, except Soto, don't have a very good lineup. Even a good, they're a bad lineup. Let's just put it out there. And so if he gets traded to a team that has a good lineup that increases his value. So I'm all about, let's go ahead and let's get Josh Bell traded sooner rather than later. So do you agree with that, Vince, that wherever he winds up, he's in a better fantasy position than he is right now?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think a team that makes sense for Josh Bell is the Brewers. They don't have a whole lot of huge needs. Right now, the way Hunter Renfroe's hitting is helping in the outfield. They're getting healthy in the pitching staff. They might add a bullpen piece, and even though Rowdy Tellez has been playing really, really well as of late, adding Josh Bell.
As soon as you're ready to add him, and he hits 2 home runs.
Yeah.
Right.
But
every other week or so, he does that.
Yeah, Bell makes sense there. You got the DH spot plus first base. Can fill kind of a need there. So Milwaukee's going to add somebody. They're not going to add anybody, superstars. They're not going to add Juan Soto, but Josh Bell seems like a kind of guy that can fit what they're doing.
And he wouldn't take quite the haul, of course, that Juan Soto was going to demand. So you could trade some guys and X and Y and Z, and you can walk away with an all-star first baseman.
Yeah.
So, Nick, where do you think that he might wind up?
I'm glad you asked me that. He's going to come to your home state there, Kevin, of Texas, and he's going to be a Houston Astro, because Gurriel is their starting first baseman. He's hitting 243, which is tied for 115th, and he's got 7 home runs and 28 RBIs. Now, his biggest stat is his OPS, which is .685, and it's 129th. So I think Josh Bell could easily best Gurriel in that spot.
Okay, so that would make great sense. And so, Dan, getting Bell is a great addition to fantasy as well as regular baseball, correct?
Absolutely. And I agree with Nick, where the Astros would make a whole lot of sense for Josh Bell. He's a switch hitter. He can hit just about anywhere in the lineup. And he cut his strikeout rate in half this season, giving him a lot of value both in real baseball and in fantasy baseball, if your league counts strikeouts against you. And moving Josh Bell from arguably the worst offense in the league to arguably the best with Yordan Alvarez hitting in the same lineup, would be so good for Josh Bell's fantasy outlook. It's hard to even put it into words. The uptick that will happen in runs and RBIs if he continues hitting at the same rate that he is now in Washington.
Yeah, so I'm super excited, of course, because I said he's on my fantasy team, to see where he winds up. So some of these other guys, like Frankie Montez, he has 4 wins, 9 losses, but a 3.18 ERA. So Oakland has sold off everybody named Jonah and John and everybody else that's on their team. And so I certainly think that he's going to be out of town. And let's see, he pitched against the Astros, speaking of which, and he won against in his last start. So I think that's a pitcher that he was number 2 behind Castillo. He's number 1 now. And so a lot of teams are going to come looking for him. Not maybe Noah Syndergaard. Do you guys think Noah Syndergaard has any fantasy appeal? Nick?
Well, I don't know about fantasy appeal, but Philly's been scouting him, so I don't know what's going to come out of that, if anything. He's been hurt. He's not fully back yet. I think at this point of his career, he'd be a project. I don't think he's going to be a starter, at least for this season. If any team gets him, he's going to bolster their bullpen. That's for sure. Like, he can throw you a solid 2 to 3 innings, but as a middle reliever. But at this year, I don't think he's starting material. No, I don't. As far as fantasy relevancy,
well, if he winds up in the bullpen, Nick, then he doesn't have any fantasy relevance going forward. You agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, I do. And I think Noah Syndergaard's probably a good 4 option on a good team. On the Phillies, he'd probably be the 3 right now behind Nola and Zach Wheeler. And he's a guy that he's got great stuff. And he's a lot like Zach Wheeler, actually, with big fastball, good breaking balls. Maybe he comes to Philadelphia and makes that Zach Wheeler jump, where Zach Wheeler always had the stuff and everyone was waiting for him to have a great season, comes to Philadelphia and is a top 3 Cy Young guy and has been fantastic again this year. I think that's a relatively low-risk move for the Phillies, who have 0 starting pitching depth behind Zach Eflin, who probably is the knees of a 50-year-old man by now.
Well, they got Ranger Suarez.
Ranger Suarez, he's been good.
He's no slouch. He's good. I like him.
He has been
anybody
good as
that's
of late.
named Ranger, has to be good in life, right? If you're going to give a kid Ranger, he better be good.
He's got to be.
How about Major Applewhite?
Yes. If you're going to name somebody, yeah, you're right. You're right there, Nick. Major and Ranger, he better be good. So
anyway,
Noah
off topic.
Syndergaard, any value to you in a fantasy way going forward?
No. Not really. But what you got to look at is there's another pitcher just came on the market, and that's Carlos Rodon in San Francisco. They're a sell team now because they stink. But his name comes up, and now you're looking at he's probably the top pitcher. Montas, I like Montas a lot, and they're saying the Yankees will get one of those 2 guys. Syndergaard would be below both of those guys, and fantasy wise, it really depends on where he ends up at. You get him in the right spot, then that changes everything. You get him in the perfect spot, but Syndergaard is a guy I kept my eye on at the beginning of the year. There was not enough there for me to be excited about, so I'm not really that interested in Syndergaard at this point.
Yeah, when he started the season, he really started off like gangbusters, and then the general Angel malaise kicked in, and he went down the drain just like the rest of the Angels did. So any other players that you guys want to highlight going forward that could be traded that you think are, as I call them, difference makers in fantasy baseball? Any players out there that you see, Vince, other than ones we've already talked about, which could make a major impact?
Yeah, what about guys in Boston? JD Martinez, Be a guy that, he looks like Boston, according to John Heyman, Boston's selling Nate Eovaldi, Christian Vasquez, and JD Martinez all on the market right now.
Nobody wants Eovaldi.
I would argue that there are people who love Eovaldi to be their number 3 pitcher in the rotation or number 4 pitcher in the rotation.
Even number 4, he works to me as a number 3 or 4 guy. Maybe not so much 3, but 4, he's got value as a number 4 starter.
Yeah, and that would still provide some fantasy value as well if he's on a contending team where you're talking about the offense is better and things like that. If he can
get out of the AL East, that would be great.
Yeah, when you're looking at the pitchers, it all comes down to, can they get some run support? We saw that with the Mets the last couple of years where DeGrom had this phenomenal year, but he wasn't getting wins because the offense wasn't scoring any runs. So you put a guy on a team now that's scoring, that changes a lot of what their outlook looks like. So there's potential for any of those kind of guys, I think, to really get in a better situation for this year and be valuable to you as you come up on fantasy playoffs.
So, Nan, any players that you see that could potentially get traded that will markedly increase their fantasy value?
I think Trey Mancini, the Orioles pushed the left field wall way back. I can't imagine that has helped Trey Mancini's power. He's a likable guy, and he's a quality hitter. If he gets into a better ballpark for him, or I believe Camden Yards has been the worst park for home runs this year after moving the outfield wall back
the fences back 100 feet. Yeah, so you're going to get that.
So if Trey Mancini goes somewhere where the left field wall is a little more reachable, I think that could improve his stock. He's still a back end first baseman, corner infielder on your fantasy team, but he's a guy that could get hot down the stretch, and he's certainly capable of making an impact. The real question is will he get moved? Obviously, he's beloved in Baltimore, and can he get hot if he goes anywhere?
All right, so Nick, players that you think could get traded to have real fantasy appeal.
Okay, I don't know if you had mentioned him, Tyler Mahle. Did you discuss him?
No, we have not talked about him yet.
Okay, I don't think he's that terrible. I think he's a good number 4 starter. I mean, he's got his ERA is a 4.4, but he's got 114 strikeouts and he's got 104 innings pitched. So he's going to give you Ks. The ERA is a little high, so he could probably get you, depending on the way your scoring goes, he'd probably get you anywhere in between 8 to 12 points to start, and I'll take that.
Well, I have to. Any place, as I was mentioning about Castillo, is a better place to pitch than in Cincinnati. Anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if he goes to a team that knows how to deal with pitchers, that could certainly have some value right there, because he doesn't have a whole lot of value. He has some, but he doesn't have nearly as much. Let's say if he got traded to a team like Atlanta or anybody else that really is not in a bandbox as a stadium. So
now, yeah, you bring up Atlanta. I'm surprised that they're not making any moves to make that.
Yeah, so far they have been silent, and they were just a half a game back, Nick. When what's this kind? I like the Phillies to take a chance on. There he is. Okay.
Well, yeah, so sure. Why not?
Philly guys, what do you think about Fired Up right there?
Dan, you go first.
I think the Phillies need to address the starting rotation. Jason Stark tweeted today that they've stopped really their search for a bullpen arm and are focusing on adding a starter. With Eflin being injury prone this year and last year, Kyle Gibson is I'd just as soon run him out of town as have him start a playoff game. So the Phillies need someone behind Wheeler and Nola, and Tyler Mahle is not a bad option. I know Jose Quintana's name has been tossed around with the Phillies. He's a solid lefty. He's a guy that I believe pitched in playoff games before, and he's pitching for the Pirates. I have to imagine leaving Pittsburgh would make you feel better.
Yeah, so Jose Quintana's been around since, I don't know, since Pete Rose played, I think. So
He has
He's
not.
been-
You're thinking of Carlos Quintana.
Carlos, I'm sorry. Okay. Jose? Okay, so not so many places. All right, so. But, yeah, he makes sense for Philadelphia, too. Quintana does. And, well, just about any pitcher that can throw the ball over the plate makes sense for Philadelphia. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I
anyone that
wouldn't
can
go
make
that far.
starts.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about difference makers. At least I did in my article, which get over to the Belly Up Fantasy website to check out today. But there's a couple of guys, Vince, and we talked about them. You know, you sent a message earlier about them, and one of them, of course, is Jacob deGrom, who is going to make his season debut on Tuesday against the Washington Nationals. I can't think of a softer landing place in the universe than the pitch against the Washington Nationals, especially if they make a move and they don't have Soto or
Cincinnati
Bell
Reds.
in their lineup anymore. So because I have Jacob deGrom in my other league, because somebody stupidly dropped him. I don't understand how they did that, but I got him. And so I think that you have to activate him as soon as he comes off the IL. Do you three not agree with that? Start with you, Dan.
I mean, absolutely. Jacob deGrom has been the best pitcher in baseball for the last 5 years, probably. He's as dominant as they come. The health hasn't been there the past 2 years, but if he's pitching for the New York Mets, he has to be on fantasy rosters and in fantasy lineups, especially against teams like the Washington Nationals, who can't score runs with Juan Soto and Josh Bell in the lineup.
That's right. So
if they have two gaping holes where Juan Soto used to play come Tuesday, that Jacob deGrom might throw a no-hitter if they let him, if Buck Showalter lets him throw that many pitches.
So Vince, any concerns about maybe pitch? You know, you mentioned it about pitch counts or any of that stuff. Any concerns in your mind with him going forward?
That'd be my concern. Yeah, the pitch count. What are they going to let him go to? You know, how long is it going to take him to be pitching 6 innings in a game? I think you're looking at 6, 7. I think would be a stretch. I mean, he didn't pitch 7 innings a lot last year before he was injured. So I think you're looking at probably this first game back, maybe 4 innings, unless things go really, really well and he's getting out of the inning with 10 pitches or something like that. Yeah, that'd be my only concern. But in a points league, I'm definitely got deGrom in immediately. In a categories league, I'm still going to play him. I do that with all-star pitchers, but I think you're not going to get as much out of them in category leagues. I think, though, in your points leagues, you're going to get the strikeouts. You're going to get probably a decision out of them as well with the way that the Mets are playing. So I think it would be crazy to not have him in the lineup if he's out there pitching.
Nick, you chime in?
Oh, with Jacob deGrom? Absolutely. You put him in there. Not only just for his pitching ability, but you put him in there for the clubhouse. I mean, he's a leader in that clubhouse. He's going to be a spark plug for that team. So, and even if he's not pitching well, he's a type of guy that's going to support everyone else in that clubhouse. I definitely activate him. That would be a no-brainer.
All right. So the other pitcher, Vince, I know this is going to make you extraordinarily happy as well. We're talking about Freddie Peralta, whom I have also on my other fantasy team. And he's set to make his season, well, not season, but he's getting back.
Return, yeah.
And he's going to pitch against the Pittsburgh Pirates, which could be an answer who's a softer landing place. Is it Washington or Pittsburgh?
Or
But
Cincinnati.
in any case, okay, so in any case, that is an extremely – it couldn't have worked out better for Freddie Peralta to come back and pitch against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And as our Milwaukee Brewers expert, Vince, the same thing. You have to activate him and start him immediately.
Yeah, and look at what Brandon Woodruff's done since he's come back from injury. He's found it again. He is back. Of course, Burns is pitching great. Lauer and Ashby have been holding their own. Hauser's been okay. But getting Peralta back, and I think, I mean, he's been throwing now a lot quicker than they expected him to. He was already on the mend much earlier, I think, than they expected. So for him to be here, I guarantee he's ready. He's healthy. They're not rushing him back, even though he's coming back earlier than a lot of people thought he would. I just think the injury wasn't as severe as it could have been. And so he'll come back. I expect him to maybe have a somewhat rough first outing. But I think in short time, he'll be back to form, and you'll be looking at those top 3 pitchers in Milwaukee going into the playoffs as a really dominant force, right where they need to be really heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, so you mentioned that he's back a lot sooner than we thought, because remember we had Brian on, was it 3 weeks ago or so? Mm-hmm. And none of us 3 had this kind of confidence that he'd be ready this soon. And so, Nick, Freddie Peralta, you have to start him immediately, do you not?
Of course. Just for everything that Vince said. I mean, you got to get him out there. Again, you're going to keep him on a pitch count. You may go, all right, let's see how he does with 50 pitches. You go when he comes back in. How you feeling? I feel fine. I feel tight. You just every 50 pitches is going to be your baseline. If it's getting tight and it feeling right, pull him out. It's going to be like a Clayton Kershaw situation as when he was throwing that no hitter. If it doesn't feel right, no matter how well he's doing, pull him out.
So the best thing to me, Dan, with both these guys, they're both veteran pitchers. They've been around, so they know their bodies. And so if it's not like they're a rookie who might be willing to do more than he's ready to do, but both of these guys are veterans. They know what they're doing. And so Peralta, same thing. You're activating him as soon as possible. Would you not, Dan?
Absolutely. And like you said, both guys are veterans. Both guys have handled heavy workloads in the past. So I'm confident in Freddie Peralta coming back, becoming a part of that 3-headed monster that the Brewers have basically been waiting for all year to have. They haven't had all 3 of them firing at the same time all season. And they could very well pull away from the Cardinals if they get all 3 of those guys pitching really well at the same time.
All right, so going forward, let's take a look at. We talked about the Mariners a minute ago, and of course Rodriguez, he's on the IL right now. Dylan Moore is on the IL right now. Ty France is going to have an MRI. All right, so I think that the Mariners are not done making moves, given this information. And, of course, that's not good news for me because I have Rodriguez on my fantasy team, and I have Devers on my fantasy team, and I've got Albies on my fantasy team. So I'm not going to bemoan it because everybody's got injury problems. So are there any other injuries that are bigger than these guys I just mentioned, Vince, that we need to discuss coming down the stretch?
I don't know. I guess all those are pretty big issues right now, especially Trout. Maybe you throw him in there.
Trout, right. So you own Trout, Vince, correct?
Yes, in the fantasy sense, yes.
Okay, so what do you make of this latest news about this back situation that he's going to have to monitor for the rest of his career?
I mean, if you're the Angels, why not blow it up? Why not trade Shohei? Why not trade Trout? You can stock your farm system for the next 20 years with those 2 guys being out. It's not turning into anything significant for your team. So, other than the ticket sales and the merchandise sales, why not just blow it up? I mean, Trout, it's just such a waste, isn't it? I mean,
it is. You talk about a player who's got the ability that goes with the best that's ever played this game. And lately, he's been as brittle as a pretzel. And it makes you sad when you think about how talented this guy is. And He's another guy that I wrote about in my article about a difference maker. Because to you, Vince, if he's in your lineup becomes supercharged.
Yeah,
right.
It does. That lineup, well, yeah, in that league, yes. Yeah, I mean, I've got a lineup that right now has Wander Franco, Trevor Story, Ozzy Albies, and Fernando Tatis all on the injured list. That I'm waiting.
Yeah, so you could definitely use a boost right in here. You know,
yeah,
and
Tatis is at least 3 weeks away, if not more than that. And that's what's going on with him. I mean, goodness, let's get him back on the field.
Yeah, so Dan, you're an owner of Tatis, correct?
Yes, I am.
So what do you even see him playing this year?
I'd be shocked if he doesn't play. It's not like he can break his wrist. I mean, he could break his wrist again, but it's not like a tendon or a muscle issue that's going to that could very well hinder him for a long time. It's just a matter of getting the strength back. And if the Padres, or I guess when the Padres are in the thick of a playoff race, whether it be them trying to chase down the Dodgers, which doesn't seem very likely.
They're not going to chase down the Dodgers. Okay.
Or now fighting.
I'm going on record right now. Dodgers are not going to get chased down.
Or now fighting with the Cardinals and Phillies for the last 2 wild card spots. They're going to want Fernando Tatis in the middle of their lineup. And it's going to happen at some point. It's a shame that it's taken this long. And I think when he broke his wrist, we all thought he'd be back by now, or at least much closer to returning to play right now. But he will play. But it is unfortunate that it's taken this long, and it's probably the reason that the Padres are nowhere near the Dodgers anymore.
Yep. So there's your fired up win in the world was Tatis coming back way slower, which that's the thing that really gets me, because it is way slower than we thought. Even when we talking about the injured list when he was on the other day, and it's the end of July, and he has no timetable still. And so that does not bear well to me at all. And so, Nick, any other player you want to highlight real quick that you think is injured that could make either a comeback? If he does, it'll make a positive impact, and if not, it's negative.
Fantasy value?
Fantasy value.
Stanton.
Okay. I agree with that. He's on my team and on the IL too.
Right.
So.
I mean, he's hitting 228, 24 home runs, but he's got 61 RBIs, and I don't know how many. Each point league is different, but he definitely be a difference maker. I know if he was out, I would be hurting. I mean, Harper's still out. How many teams are hurting because he's out? So I would say that Giancarlo is probably your biggest power hitter that's out, that's hurting your club right now, and especially if you're in a 14-team league like I am, where it's slim pickings off the waiver wire, and then everybody wants your best for their fifth. It's like, come on, throw me a bone, help me out. And like you and I had talked about it earlier, these guys, they don't look to see, well, how I'll give you him, it's going to help you, and I need your guy. No, it's they just want what they want, and they don't look. But yeah, I would say Stanton. I say okay. Stanton would that would be a big piece that's hurt.
Okay, so speaking of the waivers, let's talk a little bit about that in our last 10, 12 minutes or so. And so, Vince, who are you looking as the top pickups in fantasy right now?
So I picked up 2 guys this week. I'm curious to get an insider view from Dan and Nick on this one. I picked up relievers for Anthony Dominguez in one league. He got a win in his last outing, a save in his previous outing from there. Just looking at it, it seems like he's been being put in the right position to actually work out for fantasy. So I picked him up to give him a shot, but honestly, I don't know a whole lot about him. So in just a second, I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. The other one is a guy that actually, I believe it was you, Kevin, that was on top of this one a while back, but for whatever reason, not everybody else jumped on board with you, and that's MJ Melendez from Kansas City.
I don't understand this, Vince. He's still at like 16% owned. And I just added him to my team today.
11.8% owned. Catcher.
Is that only 11.8? Okay, so
and outfielder designation. So yeah.
If there's anybody out there in the fantasy universe, can it please explain to me how this guy was only owned in 11.8% of leagues, and he's a catcher that's in the lineup every single day?
I think he's hitting leadoff, isn't he?
I would have to check on that, but he is in.
He's hitting leadoff.
It doesn't matter if Salvador Perez, which he's a guy that we could have mentioned as well. That's returning, but that does not matter. He's going to be in the lineup as an outfielder or DH. He's been their lineup every single day, so I'm totally with you on that, Vince. MJ Melendez. Everybody out there, get to your waiver wire. Unless you're one of those guys that has, I don't even know who. Okay,
I've got a league where I've got Will Smith and Real Muto, so I don't need
Real Muto and Will Smith. If you don't own either one of those two guys, get to your waiver wires today and get MJ Melendez.
Dan, tell me about Anthony Dominguez.
He's a good pitcher. He's got electric stuff, huge fastball, good slider. He missed almost 2 years with Tommy John surgery. He was used pretty poorly when Gabe Kapler was in Philly. Gabe Kapler loved to run him out for a second inning of work, and his ERA in that second inning of work was around 10. And I think one of the reasons Kapler was fired was because he continued to run him out for that second inning where he would just consistently give up runs. But coming back in, he's used correctly, thank goodness, and he's got great stuff. And he's been really clutch this year for a Phillies team that has been crying out for a back-end bullpen guy since Jonathan Papelbon left the team. So I've got him in one of my other leagues. And he's, even if he's not picking up saves, he strikes out guys at a high rate, and he doesn't allow runs very often. And so I think his role as the closer should be secured, but he might not get all the save opportunities.
Cool.
All right. So, Dan, who are you looking to add?
Well, I went to add someone a couple days ago, and I found out that even though he's 27% owned in ESPN fantasy leagues, he's owned in all the leagues I play in, and that's Alec Boehm. Alec Boehm hit 434 in the month of July with a 1089 OPS. Only 3 home runs, but after his 14-game hitting streak was broken up last night, he went 4 for 5 with a home run today. So it's tough. His makeup is tough. He doesn't hit a lot of home runs, and he doesn't drive in a lot of runs. He doesn't steal any bases, but when he's getting on base at a 460 clip and hitting over 400 for an entire month, he's a guy that's shown he can do that in the past. And right now you have to ride his hot streak. And then I have 2 pitchers from the Royals that I'm actually interested in, and that's Brady Singer and Chris Bubich.
Okay.
Brady Singer has 3 straight quality starts, and they've come against the Tigers, which is not very impressive, the Rays, which now that they've been pretty injured, but he went 7 shutout against the Yankees last week. And Chris Bubich also has 3 straight quality starts, and he includes one, and he replaced his Detroit with Toronto, where he went 7 shutout in the Rogers Center. So both those guys have been pitching really well against some quality teams. And even if it's a spot start against a team like the White Sox that they're playing this week, or anyone that they're playing in the next couple of weeks, they're guys that have been pitching well. They're both young guys with a lot of promise. And they're starting to give the Royals some really good starts.
Yeah, I have to, because while you were talking, Dan, I went over to the other league that I'm in and looked up Alec Bohm, and he is in fact owned in that league as well. And it says 27.7%. I think ESPN needs to be investigated because this cannot be accurate at 27%, but yet he's not available in any league.
100% in our leagues.
Every league that I'm in and you're in, he's 100% owned. So take that for what you will. That a lot of time, because I've written articles about guys that were in the 20% owned, and that's been the complaint is, well, he's not available in any league I'm in. So do what you will with that. So Nick, pickups. Who are you looking to pick up?
Okay, this guy, I'm surprised he's not in 100% of leagues, and he should be. He's only 60% of ESPN leagues. Is Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan is in 60% of ESPN leagues. He's got 11 points in the past 5 days. He's got 210 points overall. And another guy I see here is Ramon Urias from Baltimore. He can play second, short, and third. And he's got 136 points overall, and he's got 9 points. If you go to our
league, Nick, he's available. He's not available because you know why? He's on my team.
Oh, okay. Well, and he's got 9 points in the last 7 days. So, I mean, he's doing well. And in ESPN leagues, he's available, and I mean, he's only owned in 20.5% of the leagues. So, if he's available in your leagues, go pick him up.
So, one guy I want to highlight when we're talking about guys that are criminally unowned, that's Jose Miranda of the Minnesota Twins.
I had him last week.
He's at 17% owned as of today. Well, he's a little bit more owned because I went ahead and got him. He had 3 hits in 3 straight games last week. Okay. And he had hits in 5 of 6 games. And so he's a guy that, another dude that go out there, see if he's available in your league and go and get him. And so we're coming to the end here. Any guys that you're looking to see, what should I hold? Should I get rid of? And one guy I want to hear about you is Pablo Lopez. We mentioned him earlier. All right. He gave up 6 runs on 12 hits and 2 2/3 innings today with 1 K. So, Nick, if you own him, are you holding or are you casting him adrift?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat those numbers again, please?
Okay, 6 runs on 12 hits and 2 2/3 innings with just 1 strikeout.
I mean, if I'd see who's out there that you can place him with, but if hold on to him, see what he does the following week, and then if he drops, then ditch him.
So Vince, hold or drop?
I'm still leaning towards hold. The guy that I use as the example this year is Matt Chapman. Matt Chapman had a rough start to the year. I held on to him all season, and it just paid off wonderfully as we continue on. He's a top, I think, 13 third baseman this year. And the guys that have it, you just got to trust that it's going to come around at some point. Now, we're getting close to the playoffs, and there are guys that I still hold on to that I probably shouldn't, but like Max Muncy, for instance. Justin Turner's another one. I know it's going to come. So I'm going to bank on the fact that it's going to pay off for me. I'd hold on to Lopez a little longer.
All right, Dan, hold or drop?
I'm holding on to Lopez.
Okay.
He got beat up by the Mets. It's going to happen. The Mets are going to get to everyone at some point. He's still, even with the bad outing, his ERA is 3.4. So I'm holding him for now.
Okay, so I have him down as a hold, which I'm doing because I own him. And so we have come to the end of another thrilling episode here. And so, Vince, where can we find you? We know you got a ton of stuff going on.
Yeah, at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram. The Sports Stove podcast is found anywhere you get your podcasts. We got a lot of stuff coming out. We just finished our college football preview episodes. We went through each Power 5 conference and previewed those with win totals and predictions and stuff like that. So that's all available. We're starting our NFL preview this next week. We'll get into the AFC and NFC East. We're going to also do some fantasy stuff with that as well. So looking forward to all that. Lots of good stuff coming out here on the Sports Stove. Check us out wherever you get your podcast.
All right, Dan. Now that we know where you are, all right. So, where can we find you out there in the Twitterverse?
You can find me on Twitter at DanDemico14. Like Vince said, we got NFL coming up. I'm going to start tweeting terrifying things about the Eagles, depending on how Jalen Hurts plays. You can always find me when the Phillies are doing Phillies things, and also follow Belly Up Baseball on Twitter.
All right, Nick.
Okay, you can always find me on tsnsfantasy.com. We just finished up our 32 for 32 summer tour, or our summer vacation. I never worked so hard on vacation before in my life. So now for the rest of the month of August, we're going to go to Mondays and Fridays. And I would be remiss to say, hey, if you can, reach out to anybody that you know out there in Kentucky. They're really going through it right now. So please reach out, see if you can help out, and then do your part.
That's good words right there, Nick. And you always find me at Kevin62 WILSEA. As I mentioned several times, I got an article right now, on the Belly Up Fantasy site on fantasy baseball. So you want to get over there and check that out. And so that brings us to a close of this episode. And everybody out there, have a great week, and we will see you next time.
Hit the button, Kevin.